you want me to hold them?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Let me know.
Ready?
All right, guys, go ahead.
All right, Laura, you were in Lexington last week. Can you describe the shift in energy with the fan base there?
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And I feel like over these past few years, we've seen a little bit of that brewing. You know, even a couple years ago when we were there, and it ended up being a 10-win season for the Wildcats. But last week felt even different than that. And I think even post last week, this week leading into coming to Athens and this opportunity with the SEC East on the line between these two teams, Big Blue Nation's one of the greatest fan bases in all of college football, and so to see them this excited and to have a reason to be so excited, it's been a lot of fun. And I would just commend the Kentucky administration for sticking with Mark Stoops and giving him the chance that they have. He is obviously the absolute perfect coach for Kentucky, and so it's been fun to watch them have success.
Laura, 2 years ago, you talked about the Texas A&M set. The production of how much Georgia's running backs were meeting in that game, and it was Zamir White and James Cook. Maybe talk about their production over the last 2 years and how they've really come into, in their own.
Yeah, it's so funny because you look across college football, you look at the NFL, you look at all these high-powered offenses that are doing all these wild and crazy things. A lot of fun, right? But Georgia is in a lot of ways a throwback team, and I mean that in a positive. And you see the run game, and it continues to grow, and they continue to get better and better. And it's helped, especially with questions at the quarterback spot, even though I'm a believer in Stetson Bennett, so don't put me on the other side of that. But, it helps when you've got a defense like they do. And at the end of the day, I think when you look at the run game and the success there, a lot of it does go back to the defense and the success that they're having on that side of the ball, which is so synonymous with what Kirby Smart likes to do. So it's been fun to watch that identity be consistent with this team, no matter who's been on the team, no matter how many great players have come through here. And listen, if you look at Georgia's track record from a run game standpoint, all these guys going on to have so much success at the NFL level, it really is a testament to what they do here.
Laura, do you feel like there's an area that Kentucky can challenge Georgia in a way that they haven't been challenged yet this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the reality. This is a tough matchup for any offense that's going to face Georgia's defense. It's just going to be it's going to be difficult, right? But what I do think is that, for Kentucky, really leaning into their defensive physicality and even some of their aggression could maybe put Georgia's offense in a standpoint where they could make some mistakes. It's going to be hard to do in a home environment, and all these caveats that I'm making for a reason, because Georgia is deserving of this #1 spot. But to me, that's maybe the one area where, being aggressive, maybe at least challenging, and maybe making sure that Stetson Bennett knows pressure's coming. He might think about it a little bit. Maybe you could force him into a mistake. A mistake here and there can help Kentucky a lot.
Laura, you mentioned the home environment. How do you think Georgia, Athens, Sanford Stadium has kind of changed into a more elite crowd? I mean, 2 weeks ago with the noon crowd at Arkansas, how loud it was. How do you think that maybe Sanford Stadium is becoming one of those places you just don't want to go to?
Yeah, I think it's always been that, right? To me, this is one of the iconic places of college football. It's one of the atmospheres, I think, you hear people say between the hedges, and you immediately can picture the stadium. You can picture the environment. And even in some of the games that haven't been conference opponents, I feel like I've heard a great crowd here. So it's only getting better and better. And I believe that, you're looking at a Georgia team that hasn't been ranked #1 in over a decade, right, during the regular season. It's been a while since they won a national championship, despite being in the national championship a couple years ago. I know that that's a sore subject for a lot of Georgia fans, but the excitement, to me, will continue to grow. And I think this is a crowd that factors in big time when it comes to the game. I mean, you mentioned the noon kick, a couple weeks ago, but I believe this is a crowd that they need to continue to rely on, especially with the way that they like to play football.
Former Heisman winner RG3 recently put defensive lineman Jordan Davis at the top of his Heisman rankings. Do you believe there's a chance that the defensive lineman wins it?
He should be in the conversation. I'm not sure. I mean, when you look at Heisman Trophy, I'm not sitting here saying that a quarterback's not going to win it, because unfortunately, that's just how it goes, right? That's who usually wins the Heisman, except, Devontae Smith won last year. But I love the idea of a defensive guy in the mix and a big man, even to make it that much better. What Jordan Davis is doing is so dominant that it does deserve that attention. And I think when you look at Georgia's defense, a lot of people say, well, there's not a big-time star that's sticking out. It's obviously a defense that's full of NFL talent and prospects that are going to go on and and have great success, but they're so good collectively. Still, to me, Jordan Davis sticks out of that mix. So if you think about the most dominant unit in college football right now, which is Georgia's defense, and then who's leading the charge there, it being Davis, sure, he deserves to be in the Heisman conversation. I wouldn't have him at the top of my list, but I'd have him in the mix. I would love it if he ends up making it as a finalist for the Heisman.
Why should Georgia fans feel different? You talked about a few years ago making a national championship. It seems like they're in the top 10 the past 5 or 6 years since Kirby's been here. What makes this team different?
So I think it's the defense, right? And I hate to be cliche, but defense does win championships. When you think about what actually matters in those big games, right? You need to, have an opportunity to stop some of these high-powered offenses. And I think the style of ball that Georgia can play does put them in a situation where they're going to be competitive with any team they might face off again. Let's say it does end up being Alabama, for instance, or one of these high-powered offenses across the country. You've got to think, how are you going to stop them? And that's what Georgia can do. I mean, this team gives up a 3-yard run and they're mad. You can just tell they've got that personality. I cannot get over the fact that over this entire season, through 6 games, they've given up 2 touchdowns. It's ridiculous that they're giving up like 5 points a game if you look at the average. So from that standpoint, they're different, and they've had dominant defenses before, but I have a strong feeling that this defense will look back on it and say it's one for the ages and it's historic. I think that's what could ultimately lead them to a national championship and allow them to be that much better in the final moments, which, as we know, the last time they had this chance, it was just one more play that was just that much better that didn't even seem like it was going to be possible with Tua Tagovailoa and Devontae Smith. So I think that really does set this team apart.
Anything else?
Having kind of chaos each week, there's upsets each week. It seems like it's a new top 10, every Sunday when it comes out. How does that, change? How is that good for college football and the game as a whole?
Oh man, I think it's great. I mean, do you guys probably feel like this? There's kind of been a renewed energy in a way in college football this week just because Alabama lost, and I'm sure certainly here it feels even better because this is the #1 team. But there's a reality to fans wanting a different crop. Having Cincinnati be good, Iowa heavily in the mix, some of these names that we don't normally see, I think matters. And in the conversation overall about expansion in the college football playoff, no matter what side you are on that, you want to see fresh faces. It feels like this year, maybe we're the closest that we've been to seeing that. I'm not saying that Alabama can't get right back in the mix, which I absolutely believe they will. I think it's important to remember that right now we're on the AP poll, right? So we haven't seen the College Football Playoff Committee actually put their rankings out, which you never know what they can do. They're looking at a variety of metrics that could change this around a little bit. But, it'd be great for college football to see some fresh faces, and we're already seeing that. And it does feel like any given week, these teams are really good, and you can catch somebody at an off week or even have the crowd factor in. I think the big theme of this season has been crowd noise factoring in a lot of ways, and that's because these teams, if you remember, it's been a couple seasons even since they've had that as something to contend with a COVID year last year. So this is foreign and new for a lot of these players and trying to figure out how to communicate.
Anything else?
Oh, thanks. I love you too. I like your pants. So cute. I like everyone else's pants too. But
Thank you.
pantses.
Pantses.
Plural. Wow,
Pants.
interesting. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Let me know if you guys need anything.